So over at Dropsite News, my colleague Murtaza Hussain and I have a fascinating news story on the way that Pakistan is stuck in the middle of the superpower struggle between China and the United States. If we can put this element up on the screen, headline over there, Pakistan promised China a new militarized naval base, leaked documents reveal. And so I want to unpack what's going on here, but let's roll back a little bit. So one of the best examples of the United States shooting itself in the foot geopolitically came in 1953 through 1979. So 1953, the U.S. and the British go in and they overthrow the Iranian prime minister there. The Iranian prime minister had been saying, like, hey, wait a minute, we got all this oil. Shouldn't this oil be benefiting the Iranian people, not just Western companies like British Petroleum? And we said, no, in fact, it should be benefiting Western countries. Overthrew them, installed an autocratic regime, the Shah. And we all know how that ended.
Oh, yeah.
1979, you get the Iranian Revolution.
It's going great.
Which has created an enemy in the region ever since, for really no reason. So in other words, not only did we betray our ostensible democratic values, we didn't even get the thing that we wanted, which was a client regime that is going to be friendly to Western interests.
Despite Kermit Roosevelt's best efforts.
Despite Kermit Roosevelt's best efforts. There are so many examples of this throughout American history. Today's story brings it up to the present. Because now you have the United States intervening in Pakistan's democratic affairs to oust Imran Khan, to then bring in a more pliant kind of military regime, which we assume is going to be, more sympathetic to U.S. interests. Instead, despite all of our support for the democratic backsliding going on in Pakistan, we have internal documents showing that a very desperate Pakistan has now granted one of China's longstanding demands of its Pakistani allies, which is to allow China to build a naval port in Gwadar, a militarized naval port. And to understand just how significant this is, we could put up a couple of maps here. So you see Gwadar is over on the western side of Pakistan, over near what's called the Strait of Hormuz. So if you look all the way to the left of that map, that's one of the kind of most important strategic locations on the entire globe. If you show the next map, it will immediately become clear why this is so important. To the west there is the Persian Gulf. Mm-hmm. So you get around this strait, you're heading into, there's the UAE, there's Saudi Arabia. This is where, an enormous amount of the world's shipping, not oil in particular, but shipping in general, flows through. And so control of this sea route is critical, not just strategically, economically, but also militarily in the event of a war. And so if you look at that port over there, you can see that it is one of the most important locations that you could possibly have. It is something that the United States has been eyeing warily for many, many years, that they have known that Pakistan and China have a close relationship. Mm-hmm. They've known that China has wanted to militarize this port for its, and also develop it strategically, economically.
And this is a huge player in the Houthi situation as well, right? Fears that this could escalate into the Strait of Hormuz.
Right, you've had all sorts of,
literally right now,
economic difficulties around the world because of the way that the Houthis have been able to shut down shipping, around that area. It shows how important this entire region is. So if you roll back a little bit, what's happening in Pakistan, and people should read the entire story to get the full context of what's going on. Pakistan, the kind of prime minister has had dominion over. Dominion is too strong a word, but has had influence over domestic policy, whereas the military traditionally managed foreign affairs. Here in the United States, the civilians are supposed to manage everything. That's how it ought to work. That the compromise, so to speak, that the military allowed in Pakistan is, we'll let the prime minister do a few things internally. Imran Khan did things like brought about like a version of Medicare for all, like expanded health care to people. They're like, all right, you want to do that as long as we can still have our graft and we still control foreign policy, fine. But then Imran Khan started getting involved in foreign affairs. He had a good relationship with the Trump administration, interestingly, given that the Trump administration was in the middle of enacting a Muslim ban. But they got along well, the two of them. The Biden administration and Imran Khan, not so well. He famously tried to get a call from Biden after Biden was elected, couldn't do it. Like it just, there was something about that relationship that the Biden administration wanted distance in. So then in June 2021, he sits down with Jonathan Swan of Axios, actually, Axios at the time, and Swan asks, if the Taliban takes over in Afghanistan, will you allow, drone flights out of Pakistan? That was a key element of the Biden administration's what they called over-the-horizon approach. They said, we're going to project power over the horizon. We don't need to occupy Afghanistan because our over-the-horizon capacity is unparalleled. Key to that over-the-horizon capacity was being able to operate out of Pakistan. Imran Khan said, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. And so that was looked at by the United States as a major affront to them. Then in February of 2022, Imran Khan had a long-planned state visit to Moscow that coincided with the invasion, Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The U.S. tried to put pressure on him to turn around, come back, cancel the trip, or at minimum denounce the Russian invasion. Imran Khan refused. He said, and at a rally, he said, "What are we, your slaves? That we're going to just do what you tell us?" He said, "We're going to remain neutral. We are friends with Ukraine. We are friends with Russia. This is a war between them," because Pakistan desperately needs, grain from both, energy from both. Like they don't. It's not in their interest to get in the middle of that conflict. Around this time, the State Department official Don Liu, 2 weeks later, meets with the Pakistan ambassador and says, "Listen, we are very bothered by this." What he calls aggressive neutrality that Imran Khan is taking between Ukraine and Russia. But the United States believes that it is a policy of the prime minister alone, not a policy of Pakistan government more broadly. And if Imran Khan is removed in a no confidence vote, all will be forgiven from the United States and everything will be cool. Just days later, weeks later, the army chief gives a televised address where he denounces the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So breaking with the prime minister, the army then orchestrates the no confidence vote that the U.S. had said it wanted to see happen. They put pressure on a number of Imran Khan's party officials who had links to the military and who could be compromised by the military. They flip their votes. They oust Imran Khan. And then they start shifting back toward the United States. So if you remember, Nancy Pelosi travels to Taiwan for August, September of 2022. And this is after they have ousted Imran Khan. And China goes to all of its allies, and they want a full-throated denunciation of Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. Pakistan demurs. They put out a little statement that is extremely mild, and it kind of infuriates the Chinese. Like, you're not going to stand with us? They call it an iron brotherhood they're supposed to have between Pakistan and China. In October of that year, as we report in this article, Bajwa, who's the military chief, finally gets what he's been demanding of the United States, or begging of the United States, which is a state visit to the U.S. While he's in Washington, he gets to meet with the top officials. He also, at the Pakistan ambassador's residence, he meets with a bunch of kind of foreign policy heads here in Washington. And he tells them he doesn't really like the Chinese. They've always loved the United States. And he says two things that really raise eyebrows to make the point. He says he loves American sitcoms from the 90s.
Many such cases?
His favorite, Married with Children.
Married with
He's
Children.
Married with Children, which is excellent, by the way.
I'm surprised that you're willing to go to the mat for Married with Children,
Oh.
given the various political incorrectness.
It's satire.
It's satire, you're right.
It's
You don't have to tell me.
absolutely genius.
Yeah, I love
absolutely
Married with
genius
Children.
show. And he adds he doesn't even like Chinese food. So he's sending a very clear, this leaks out, of course, to the Chinese.
Important to establish that.
As well.
Right.
And back in New York, the Pakistani representative to the UN starts getting chided by the Chinese representative there, like these sarcastic comments about, no, you're best friends now with the U.S. Like what happened to us? At the same time, China keeps telling Pakistan, look, we do not see ourselves as in a Cold War, a zero-sum Cold War with the United States. Like, it is okay if you want to have good relations with the United States. That does not mean you have to have bad relations with us. We don't see it that way. But what our reporting shows is that Pakistan understands that that's how the United States sees it, that they have to pick one or the other. So this whole time they're having a very difficult balance, but they choose the United States. They figure United States is the way to go. And at first it starts to pay off. As we also reported, Pakistan not only stops becoming neutral, they start producing 155 millimeter shells for Ukraine.
Yep.
Because they're very good at making these like low-grade, crappy shells, which are the kind of shells that are important for this kind of stalemated war in Ukraine, where you're just lobbing endless cheap munitions at the other side.
And it's a boost to the Pakistani economy.
Boost the Pakistani economy.
Right.
And the U.S. secretly agrees to let Pakistan use this clandestine weapons program as basically collateral financing for an IMF loan that comes in.
Lovely.
And so the IMF loan is supposed to help stabilize things.
Many such cases.
The IMF loan, because Pakistan is such a basket case and because it's not following through on any of its commitments when it comes to reforms, doesn't fully come through, and the economy keeps collapsing. And because it keeps spiraling out of control, they have to go back to China. And that's where our story comes in. They go back to China and they're like, look,
we love Chinese food.
We love Chinese food. Married with Children, really kind of problematic in some of its depictions. Not a huge fan. Love you guys. What can you do? And basically the what that they need is China has lent them a bunch of money that is coming due. They need those loans refinanced at a nice rate. Or else they're completely screwed because they're not getting money in from anywhere else. And so China is like, well, you know what we want. Like we want access to this port at Gwadar.
Right.
And also, we want you to start protecting our Chinese citizens who are in Pakistan doing the Belt and Road construction projects, and which Pakistan had not been doing effectively. You keep having these terrorist attacks, hitting these Chinese officials. The Chinese started to think that at first they're telling them, okay, here's where the Chinese workers are going to be, make sure they're protected. And then it seemed like they were more likely to get hit when they told them. So they get, what's going on here? It's compromised, they're leaking this out. So now they want private security. They want joint security. The Chinese they don't trust the Pakistanis anymore to do the security. They want their own security forces. But that's a huge affront to sovereignty.
Sure.
It's Pakistan saying that they can't protect the Chinese civilians within Pakistan's borders and have to allow a foreign government to have its own security forces in there, which they would already be doing with a militarized, port of Gwadar. And meanwhile, because Pakistan's position is now so weakened, Pakistan didn't even get anything for this concession. It's just a concession. Now, the documents also suggest that there is no timeline for the execution of this, that Pakistan is going to continue to try to say, okay, yes, we've agreed in principle, and this is going to happen, quote, in due time, as one of the documents says. But that doesn't mean necessarily tomorrow. And now that this reporting is out, I'll be at the State Department later today asking them about this. The U.S. is going to, I'm sure, raise significant concerns. But then it raises the question, what on earth is the United States getting out of supporting basically a military dictatorship that is like embarrassing it on the international stage, because they're trying to sanction Venezuela, they're trying to sanction Georgia for a democratic backsliding, while Pakistan is engaged in just complete evisceration of its own democracy, and they're not even getting a military ally out of it. They're handing this key port over to China instead. Just complete debacle on every level.
And can you maybe give some context on the state of the Pakistani economy? Because I think that gets to the motivations of Pakistan in navigating the difficult relationship or trying to balance U.S. interests, Chinese interests with its own interests.
So the IMF just announced that within a couple weeks, they're going to go to their final executive board meeting with a $7 billion, what they call EFF, a bailout, which right now, the economy is a complete disaster, rampant joblessness. They recently put in a new firewall to try to censor the media.
Try to censor Ryan.
A lot. I think it was time to some of our articles. They banned drop site news inside Pakistan, and it slowed the internet to a complete crawl. You've got constant blackouts. Like the heat waves there are insane. Like they're getting hit with climate change, worse than most other countries because of just where they are geographically on the planet and what their climate already was. And so right now the military basically controls the entire economy. And so you have 50% illiteracy and a completely stifled population. It's very much like Egypt, where you've got these like military-run corrupt companies that just exist to basically make the generals get richer, and the generals then take their money. This is what's fascinating about the international relations, and they stash it in London and the U.S. Through properties and other holdings. And so, yes, it's true that the Bajwa likes Married with Children and doesn't like Chinese food, and he talked about his culture. He was trying to say, I like America better.
Right.
And who can blame him? It's great over here. We love it. But what is really also going on is that their children are being educated here, and their illicit gains are housed here. And that means we can snatch them. The Russian oligarchs learned that the hard way. After Putin's invasion, the UK and the US seized a bunch of oligarch property. And so we really have them.
Pakistani elites are tethered to the U.S. financially.
We have the Pakistani elites kind of captured in the sense that it might not be in the interest of Pakistan itself to continue to have this tight relationship with us, but it's in their personal interest because we can just, oh yeah, is that your penthouse apartment on 34th Street?
Your yacht?
Yeah, that's your yacht. Not anymore. You're sanctioned, boom. And once you're sanctioned, once it's snatched, you're done. So we'll see it. Which is why it will be difficult for them to actually execute, and China knows it, actually execute on this promise that they've now made.
One of the more interesting subplots of the war in Gaza right now is how China has distanced itself from Israel in the aftermath of the invasion after October 7th. China sort of is trying to make inroads, literally inroads, with a lot of different countries around the world and sort of curry favorability, and realized that it couldn't continue having this friendship between Netanyahu and Xi Jinping that was playing out very publicly. I mean, Netanyahu would rebuke the United States by turning to China before October 7th in various ways. That was like sort of a strategic maneuver that he was very intentionally making. And I'm curious, Ryan, what you think about how this is playing out in the context of Gaza, which is obviously very important to countries like Pakistan and is important to China, given its reputation being on the line as it tries to make, again, literal inroads, please excuse the pun. It's in different countries as a critical mission to its own self-interest on a world stage going forward.
Yeah, publicly, Pakistan doesn't recognize Israel and is critical. But privately, it is quite friendly and on good terms. The ISI is on good terms with Israel, whereas Imran Khan would have, if he were free now, he's in prison, would be one of the most vocal critics of what's going on there.
As would his supporters, if he were, yeah.
Yeah. But as it is, the country's neutralized when it comes to that question. But I think from China's perspective, Africa plays a huge role in this, and the global South more generally. That China sees, China believes that the global South and the BRICS countries see U.S. hegemony as not beneficial to them, and see the rise of China and multipolarity as potentially beneficial and giving them more room to maneuver and actually have a sense of their own agency and nationalism. And they see Israel as a bulwark of American hegemony, and see siding with the Palestinians there as favorable to a rise of multipolarity. Yeah.
There's so many layers to this. So fascinating, great story.
Interesting stuff.
A lot of people won't be able to read it in Pakistan, unfortunately.
Well, they call it VPNistan because everyone there has a VPN. So I think people are going to find ways to get to it.
I'm sure they will.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.